But I tell you what, let's introduce the young guys. The three of you that have spoken, stay seated. The young guys, and isn't that terrible? I'm already distancing my age with theirs. If you guys come up here, we'll enter into a dialogue and bring in some of the new insights. And let's start with you, Daniel.
Yeah. That's interesting. The young guys, I'm 28 almost, and in Berlin they look at me as old. Just to take an example on how things are moving over there.
Gosh, you guys are tall.
I was 31 on the Friday, so I take that as a good compliment.
There you go. There you go. I won't tell you how old I am. Maybe that'll come out later, but we'll see. Daniel, tell us what holder the ord is. And first you have to say it in English, obviously.
Yeah, holder the ord. If you put into Google Translate, it says keeping their words, or do they keep their promises, is a better translation, I guess. And holder the ord, it's a new parliamentary watchdog here in Norway. And our goal is to make it easier for people to follow what's going on in politics, what politicians actually do in power, and connect people and politicians closer together. And I guess, as many of you know, there are elections here in Norway this autumn. How many of you have the right to vote? Yeah, there are quite some. But I mean, the next question goes for all of you, and never mind your country. Do you think it's easy to find out what politicians actually have done? Show a hand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have the ambassador on the first row, of course. But that's basically where we started out. We also thought this was difficult, and we decided to figure out a way to improve this. And in the Norwegian Parliament, how this was done before was that if you wanted to find out what a single politician had voted, then you had to call the archive, and they would send you a PDF file by email. And then it was very difficult to kind of get an overview. And it was also packed into this very complicated technical language. But now, with the new technology, they have started off with this data feed. So we use that to build a service where you can easily find out what actually is going on. And our starting point is not what politicians actually say or how the issues are presented necessarily in Parliament. We start out with what ordinary people care about, voters. What are the issues as they are discussed in the media? And then find all the votes that are related to that. We also code all the political party platforms' promises and have put these into a big database as well. And when we connect these two together, we can also find out which politicians are best at keeping their promises.
But who uses this service? They are mainly the youth, yeah? But it sounds like it's something that everyone would have a benefit from.
Yes, yeah? And I think we see when you look at who actually goes to vote, we see that the young people tend to vote less frequently than more older or more adult people. And therefore, I think this is particularly important for youth. But we haven't designed and built this for young people particularly. We think it's important for all. But I think if we develop it in a way that makes it easy for young people to use it, it will also be easy for all of us. So it's a good kind of way to think about it. And I guess our goal is to become the main, the number one source for facts about Norwegian politics, which is kind of a hairy goal. But we are also in a very fortunate situation that we have won a big advertisement campaign. Because every second year, the Norwegian ad industry, they give away a campaign for free to a worthy cause. And for some reason, we have been chosen as this year's worthy cause. So actually yesterday, we spent the whole day on the film set with our advertisement agency and the production company. They're doing all this work for free for us. And in a couple of weeks, this big campaign is going to come up on TV in the main Norwegian newspapers. And hopefully it's going to generate a lot of traffic and interest to our website.
Very good, very good. I have to say, it's, yep, give him a round of applause. And I have sort of a personal interest here because this project actually started through a program that I facilitated through. So I can't take any credit for it, but this, I've known about this since it was just a little idea or the little light bulb in your head. So it's phenomenal to hear about the success going forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting also what was said earlier about the small. What actually was the start of all this, and it was just that I think it was by incident I heard about this program from somebody. I guess not a very close connection, but on Facebook, and I just thought, yeah, this sounds interesting, and I signed up, and then I met some people, and then we met some new people, and here we are 3 years later.
Yeah, in a new startup. Let's go to you, Anders. Mesh. But Mesh isn't the only thing you've started. I mean, we can start with Mesh, but tell us a little bit more about your background, because it's like your third company or fourth?
It's my third company, and so I started out as a genuinely young entrepreneur. I was 21, and I also had some hobby projects before that, but I was 21 when I tried my first serious startup. We created a database where we got students to sign up, so we got their a lot of data, we got their grades, we got their hobbies, gender, what they studied and everything. And then we made a matchmaking site for companies. And we were 21, we didn't have any experience with entrepreneurship or business at all. But we went ahead really quick, and in half a year we had created the service and had the 500 kind of leading students from NTNU on the platform. And we had companies like McKinsey and people high up in those companies caring about what we do, and we were partnering up with consultancies, energy companies, and everything to create recruitment sessions. But we had kind of put on skylapper and just forced ahead, and we tried to only care about the students and the people we were making the product for, and we didn't want to kind of look into everything around it, the other recruitment companies, the schools, and all that kind of stuff. So we ended up with surprises on all fronts because we didn't know the whole market and our surroundings when we launched. So we got a very valuable lesson. You need to know your surroundings and know what you're doing a little bit more than just the core of your service. So after less than a year, we had to shut down the service and sell the database to another recruiting company, a Swedish company, and they're now 100 people and all over the world. But we learned a lot, and we were considered a failure. And the last article that was written about us was it was called the Norwegian word is soleklart lovbrudd. How do you say that in English?
Illegal.
Obvious felony.
Obvious felony.
Yeah.
It was in the student paper, and what we had done is that we had spammed students with the student mails we had. We didn't think about that. It was 6-7 years ago, and it was quite normal. If I wanted to sell my bike, I did it. I sent the mail out to my classmates. So we had done that, and that was an obvious or felony. So we ended up with that article, and that brought our company down, and it also brought us down for quite a while. But even though we failed that company, we had learned so much professionally and so much personally by starting that company and doing it for a year. So we decided to stay in the entrepreneurial community. And we ended up meeting a woman 20 years older than us with a great idea and commercialized a consumer product that protected prams when you traveled by airplanes. That sounds strange, but that is actually something that's needed. It's the biggest luggage problem for airlines, and we had a good solution for it. And we ended up getting into 500 stores in the Nordic region and also started to expand to Germany and England. And when we were going to raise our first serious round of money, we were sold instead. We were a small company with 5 people, and we had spent 2 years traveling around to those 500 stores. I've been to China 5-6 times. The first time I didn't have any money, so I called down to the producers and asked if I could stay at their place because we couldn't afford a hotel. And that was the first time that happened to them, so they didn't know what to answer, just said, well, okay. And we had tons of stories like that and had fun for 2 years and learned a lot. And we did it very differently from the first time. We understood that we didn't have the experience and didn't have the network we needed to create a company. So we went out, and before we launched Prampack, we had been in meetings with 300 people from the top entrepreneurs and investors in Norway to people handling luggage at their airplanes, just to learn and to get an overview of how it worked. And that, in the beginning, that was just to learn, but we found out that doing that, it gave us a network and it gave us connections that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And because of that, opportunities kept coming back to us. And actually, the company that bought us, their chairman and their CEO had been mentors to us all the way along. We didn't think about that, but of course they had paid attention to what had happened those 2 years. And when we wanted to have them on board, they wanted to buy us. But we learned something about networking. We managed to tap into other people's experience and learned a lot from that. And another very interesting thing was that when we expanded out of Norway, we ended up getting into entrepreneurial networks, international entrepreneurial networks, and got into modern entrepreneurial kind of infrastructures and systems. And we found a lot of the things we had missed as young entrepreneurs in Norway. We met other people with the same energy, with higher ambitions than us, younger than us, pushing us forward. People weren't telling us to go back to school anymore. They were telling us to think bigger. When we came to Sweden and London and told everybody that we were 25, we're in 500 stores, and we were so proud, they were like, why haven't you started, or why have you only started in the Nordic region? Don't you dare starting in Germany and Japan? We were like, oh, okay, we'll do that, we'll try. And it raised our ambitions, and it also made us think differently. It made us think that it is possible to think bigger, and the connections we got also made it possible to think bigger, because before we had those networks and knew those people, it wasn't realistic to get, for example, international investors or partners or anything, because we didn't have an outreach to them. But those things interested us a lot, and the second company was sold. My partner went to Brazil for 3 months to play beach volleyball. He's 178 tall, and the average height in the world tour is about 2 meters, but he wanted to see how good he could become. And he came back 3 months later and was not a pro. And we traveled together to these leading innovation hubs like Silicon Valley, New York, Berlin, but also Stockholm, Helsinki, and London, and European hubs. And after doing that for half a year, we were kind of sold on the notion that there is a technological entrepreneurial revolution going on. And the infrastructure is being built by largely the next generation of entrepreneurs and young people, down to 18 or even 15 years. And that is very inspiring. And we wanted to kind of build on that and connect to that and start doing something similar in Norway. So that's what we're doing now with Mesh.
With Mesh. And say, what is Mesh?
Yeah, I had. Yeah,
that was a nice introduction.
I had 3 minutes, so I used a little bit over time. But basically, after we had traveled around, there were so many things that we have been inspired by, and we had so many ideas for what we could make before. But we found out that we want to create a physical platform that can be a core of entrepreneurial community in Norway, and we want to build from that, build services, build networks, connect early stage innovators, late stage innovators, and make resource programs. We want to work with media. We've invested in an entrepreneurial magazine called Genuine. So we're trying to do a lot, but we think the best way to start is to create a physical platform where entrepreneurs can meet through events and through a workspace, through a cafe that attracts international investors when they're in Oslo. So that's what we've started with. We have a 2,500 square meter building, pretty close to here, with a co-working space, a cafe, an event space, and what we call Mesh Community for established entrepreneurs and investors, which is going to launch in August. And we're also launching a maker space in June, in a month.
So you're sort of giving the environment for basically the future technology developments to occur, and I know that you're also located
is also
there.
Okay.
Our goal is to create a platform for people with ideas that can have high impact on the surroundings. And we're a startup very much ourselves. We've been doing it for a year, so we're going to use the next 2, 3, 4 years to actually create impact and to do all the things that we're talking about. But we're on the way. Getting there.
Very cool. And I think, as you can see, they really utfyller hverandre. They're really very complementary. This is my own language, and I can't think of the words. Now I'd like to invite the rest up.